You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show. Today we have a special show. We're going to have our own Dr. Julianne Malveaux as our guest for the entire show. There's so much going on right now. I know I had time to book another guest, but when I saw I didn't have anybody confirmed, right away my mind said, just let Dr. Julianne do this show. You don't need to play no reruns, nothing. There's too much going on right now. So you're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. We've been here for 15 years, every Friday at 6 p.m. It's Tuesday. We pre-record now. So we're going to be talking to Dr. Julianne Malveaux. She is an economist, a PhD, former college president, former dean of a couple of universities, and she's an entrepreneur, an author, and president of Rainbow Push at Reverend Jesse Jackson's youth program. So I want to just give you Dr. Julianne Malveaux. She speaks all over the world. And we're going to be talking first, though, with Dr. Julianne about the government shutdown. Is that going to take place over the weekend? What do you think about that, Dr. J?
Probably not. It depends on what the Senate does. The House of Representatives did pass a measure that would prevent a shutdown. However, it's not the best measure in the world. It would cut about $13 billion from domestic spending, but it would increase the defense spending. The continuing resolution, which means they're basically operating off the old budget. The continuing resolution passed by 217 to 213. Two people did not vote. Now it goes to the Senate, where they mark it up and fight about it. And in order for that version to pass, they're going to need 7 Democrats to cross the line, because you need 60 votes on a financial vote. You need 60 votes to pass. So they're going to need 7 Democrats. A couple we know already will. John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, has shown himself to be a real moderate. He wants to get along with Trump. He keeps saying that. He went down to Mar-a-Lago and met with him. So he's probably going to go for the vote. But are there 7 more? And that's going to be the big question. If for our listeners in the DMV, the District of Columbia stands to lose $1 billion in revenue. That will affect our police and fire. It will possibly affect education here as well. It's not a good deal for the district. And we know the district has already been under much consideration, and not even consideration, just much examination.
Scrutiny.
Yes, scrutiny. The congressman from Georgia, who is the chair of the Congressional Oversight Committee, which basically adjudicates D.C., he has said that if Mayor Bowers did not take down the Black Lives Matter Plaza, that there would be another $1 billion on the chopping block. So they use us, but this is not inconsistent. We've seen the District of Columbia being not only put under scrutiny, but used as a dumping ground for any kind of congressional experiment that they could come up with. So we're not surprised about that. I feel very, at first when I heard the mayor say she agreed to take down the Black Lives Matter Plaza, I was a bit chagrined. But then as I thought about it, I said, this mayor is somewhere between a rock and a hard place.
She had to do it,
Yeah, she doesn't really have very many choices. And there are a whole lot of other ways you can say that Black Lives Matter. So I noticed that this evening Tuesday evening, actually, before I got ready for you, I went and took a little walk because the weather was so lovely. And on a particular block on our street, there was one Black Lives Matter sign there, whatever. Now I saw 4. People are pushing back, so I love it. But basically, it's very likely that we will not have a shutdown, but it's all going to depend on what happens between the House and the Senate. And what we do know is that this has to be done by the 14th, which is Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. So this has to be done by the 14th. Friday. And there will be enormous pressure, enormous pressure on everyone to try to get this done.
And so what does the new CR do to D.C.?
As I said, it takes away from D.C. $1 billion.
Oh, okay.
So basically, D.C. will lose money. The domestic spending will be cut. $13 billion of non-defense spending, and they'll increase defense spending by about $7 billion. So again, these are their priorities. They don't care about people. They care about so-called defense. I call it offense.
Well, we saw Tesla cars at the White House today like it was a parking garage, Dr. J. What's up with Tesla?
Well, Tesla has lost about half of its stock value since the Orange Man became president. So the Tesla stock in January, let's say January 15th or so, was selling for $440 a share. Now it's someplace around $230 a share. So they've lost almost half of their value. The Orange Man, in his willingness to support his buddy, decided to turn the White House lawn into a used car lot.
Yes.
So the 2 Tesla cars were sitting there, and he told the press he was going to buy one. But I think it's very unseemly for the President of the United States to be doing something like that.
Yes,
I mean, extremely unseemly. But, you know, the what do we call him? You know, the co-president for purchase. That's what I call Elon Musk, co-president for purchase. He pretty much gets to do whatever he wants to, and no one is willing or able to stop him. But I just think that was such a display of insanity, to say the least, to have the President of the United States hawking cars.
Yes, it is. It's horrible. You know, I was so concerned about Elon today. I looked up to see if he is even a citizen of the United States, and I found out that he went to the University of Pennsylvania and became a citizen, I think, in 92, but neither here nor there. Dr. J, do you want to talk about what's up with the economy now, or would you want to talk about it after our commercial break?
Let's talk about it now.
Okay, go ahead. What's up with the economy?
Well, here's what we're seeing, Lyndia. People are distressed, stressed, disturbed, nervous. There are so many more cuts, and we'll talk about some of those cuts later perhaps, but the Department of Education is cutting more than 2,000 people. Virtually every government department is cutting jobs. It's not so much that the jobs being cut, but they're being cut in such a non-orderly fashion that nobody knows who's next. You know, you've got good performance reviews, you've done a good job, but suddenly you're on the chopping block. So
it doesn't matter about your work performance, sounds like.
It's very capricious. In fact, in some places, in some departments, they fired people, then they have to bring them back because they fired the wrong people. You know, like the people in charge of the nuclear codes. How are you going to fire them? So anyway.
All right, we're going to go to a commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk some more about the economy and are we heading for a recession? There's been a lot of talk about that on the news. Let's go to a commercial break, and we'll be back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, you know, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery bus. In lectures on brotherhood, Ms. Parks often said, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that wasn't true. I was not tired physically. I was not old. I was 42. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." Driven out of Montgomery by harassment and death threats, Detroit, Michigan became her new home. Rosa Parks will always be remembered as the mother of the civil rights movement. Raised in the AME church, she once said, "I remember finding such comfort and peace while reading the Bible."
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lyndia Grant Show. We are back. Now we're at our second half of our show. I am here with Dr. Julianne Malveaux. We're going to continue what we were talking about before we went to our commercial break. She was talking about the economy and what it's like, and you all have been watching on TV. Are we heading for a recession? Talk to us some more about that, Dr. J.
At the rate we're going, Lyndia, I believe we are. The reason being, there's very little consumer confidence. Between January and February, consumer confidence went down by 9 percentage points. That's the largest drop in consumer confidence in probably 20 years, which means that this is the University of Michigan does a study. They ask, how are you feeling about the economy? People are not feeling good. When people don't feel good, they don't spend money. And
That's
two-thirds
right.
of our economy is based on consumer spending. So it's just, I was just watching a segment on, I think it was Bloomberg, and they interviewed a bunch of people about buying cars. And this one lady said, well, I work for the federal government. I'm not going to buy a car unless I have to. In other words, she's going to let the old one she's driving run until it falls because she doesn't know what her job prospects are going to be like. And you have a whole lot of other people who are in that very same situation. So basically, if consumer confidence is low and spending is down, GDP will go down, and we are in a position to have a recession.
And
Now,
grocery prices haven't come down.
They have not, and the president has done nothing to inspire confidence. Indeed, almost everything he's done, the tariffs are a huge burden. Of course, he doesn't know what he's doing, so one minute you're going to have a tariff, the next minute you change your mind. But the other thing that consumers do not like is disruption. If I tell you that your electric bill is going to go up by 10%, you know that, and you have enough sense to budget that. But if I tell you it's going to go up by 10%, then I change my mind. I said, no, Lyndia, I think it's going to go up by 5%. Then I turn around and say, no, maybe 12%. You're thinking, I don't know what the is going on.
Exactly.
And so your temptation is to keep your money in your pocket. And that's all this tariff uncertainty. One day you have it, the next day you don't. They threatened Canada. We in Canada have been back and forth. And the arrogance of some U.S. economists, well, Canada is too small for us to fool with. Well, this is a fool around and find out moment because Canada isn't playing. What we have done is the United States has squandered its eminence. The world used to look up to us. The world is laughing at us now.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on the economy as well because it weakens the dollar. So we are likely to be headed to a recession. I won't say 100%, but likely, unless they start tweaking some things. We do know that, in general, people are not feeling good about the economy.
Let me just say to you, Dr. Julianne, I have a feeling that this president want to do everything he can to the government so he won't have to come out of it. He want to ruin it because when he's out, he has to go to court. He has too many cases still out there hanging on a limb. And so we have to remember he's the president, but he is not interested in coming back here being a citizen. He'd rather be the king. I'm just babbling, telling you what is in my spirit, Dr. J. Does any of that sound right?
It's some of it does. You know, I believe if I didn't know any better, I would think that he was Putin's first cousin.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because he seems to be working more for Putin than he does for the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I feel. But what we do know is he may want to be the king, but a couple of judges have been time enough for him. Sister in D.C. appeals court, when he fired Gwen, I forget her last name, the sister was the head of the National Labor Relations Board. When he fired her, she sued. The judge in D.C. District Court judge said, you are not a king. You don't get to do that here. So he's pushing the envelope to see how he can expand presidential power. But blessedly, a lot of people are pushing right back. And that's the blessing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I had to get that off my chest because that's where I feel. Okay, let's talk now, Dr. J, about college sanctions for anti-Semitism. What is that all about?
Well, Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, who used to be the head of Worldwide Wrestling, so that tells you something right there. She has announced, I believe yesterday or the day before, that 60 colleges and universities that have been warned about anti-Semitism. And if they continue with their, quote, anti-Semitism, they will not get any more federal funds. Now, much of the anti-Semitism that they're calling out, in my mind, is not anti-Semitism. You can be critical of Israel and not be anti-Semitic. You can have a favorable view towards some of Hamas activities and not be anti-Semitic. But basically, that's what they're saying. And in 60 universities, they're saying fail to protect Jewish students and they're anti-Semitic. Along the same lines, a Palestinian student, he's about 29 years old, pregnant wife, they took his green card and in the process of deporting him. They took him, he's a Columbia University student, and took him to Louisiana as his wife is 8 months pregnant. His name, of course, is Muhammad Khalil, and he's made a lot of the papers. But some people are still reacting from the protests that students had on many campuses, including Columbia, around Hamas. And so what that particular one deportation is not the whole story, but I was very disappointed that only, I believe it was 17 members, the entire Congressional Black Caucus did not support this gentleman. Ilhan Omar wrote a very brilliant letter to talk about what was wrong with this, but the whole caucus did not support her. So, but here's what's going on. A lot of people, not necessarily, a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are scared. If we go back to look at the continuing resolution, only one Democrat voted in favor of it, and one Republican voted against it. And the one Republican who voted against it, they said that they are going, Elon Musk and the Orange Man, so they're going to primary him to get him out of Congress because he dared to go against what, the president wanted. So what we're really seeing is a lot of people who are in swing districts, they're scared, and they're towing the line.
Well, I can't believe it, I'm telling you. Dr. J, do you have any other areas that you want to talk about before we get ready to close our show out today, or give a overview of what you want to tell people to do this weekend? What can we do about some of this that's going on. I know National Council of Negro Women set out something to tell women during Women's History Month, things that we ought to do to protect ourselves, like have our passports ready.
Yes.
We don't know what's going on. It sounds like it's almost positioning itself to go like it used to be in the 50s and 60s, and we have to be cautious. Talk to us about what you think about that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. One thing I will say to people, look at if you are an investor, and half of all Americans are not, but if you are in your stock market, you know that the stocks have plummeted. I mentioned Tesla stock, but all stocks have plummeted. The Dow is down by a couple thousand points. That's not a good thing. So just take a look at your portfolio. Talk to your financial advisor. But number two, this is something that Dr. Angela told me years ago. Keep some cash in your house.
Yes.
She said you always need to have some cash because, you never know what's going to happen with all this craziness. I mean, what if you have to go somewhere and you don't have any cash? Credit cards may not work. So I just advise people keep a couple grand or at least one so that you have the flexibility to maneuver yourself in the middle of this. Also, get emotional support. One of the things I found, I was reading an article this morning about from a doctor who was saying how many of his patients were coming in for their regular appointments, but they were showing signs of depression, unease, all those things. Make sure you have emotional support. Everybody's not a Christian, but go to church. And if you don't go to church, go somewhere. Go where you have support. Spend time around kind people. People are just really under a lot of pressure these days. Spend time around kind people. Take a child out for a hamburger or something. Just something that makes you smile, something that makes you happy. Because in the middle of this, we have to have happiness. I think about Mary McLeod Bethune, Lyndia. I think about her often. And, her last will, I leave you love. She really, when I think about when she founded the National Council in 1935, is just outside of the Depression. What kind of conditions were we as Black people living under then? And the reason why I ask that is because I have so many people who are relatively privileged, not super privileged, not Elon Musk privileged, but they have a decent salary, a decent car, they live in a nice place. Now, all of that is under threat, but, we didn't even have that during the Depression. And we still managed to jump the broom, to smile, to have joy. And I'm just saying that we need to get back to a place like that. But we're going to see layoffs here in D.C. Yes, we will, because D.C. cannot run a deficit. So if we're going to have at least $1 billion, and it might be a $2 billion cut, some of our friends are going to lose their jobs. Be a resource for somebody.
Yes, indeed.
Keep your eyes open to help people, because this is going to be a perilous time. Now, it may not last that long. I believe that these Republicans are going to show their behind so badly that midterm elections may not turn out their way.
Yeah, I think so.
Another thing I want to mention briefly, it was on my notes, but I don't think I've mentioned it, was what's happening with the Department of Education. They're cutting their workforce by half. Not only that, India, the money that is the special assessment for disabled students, that's going to be cut. Title I, poor students, that will be cut. But we shouldn't, if we go down the list of everything that's going to be cut, we'll get headaches. The deal is not what's going to be cut, what's not going to be cut. The deal is that this is a slash and burn administration. Mr. Musk has come in. What did he say? He was going to take a buzzsaw. He was going to take a buzzsaw. Well, we're seeing the buzzsaw, and the buzzsaw is hitting many people that we know, love, appreciate, and most importantly, depend on. Depend on. So,
and you can see from the protesters, it's not just Black folks. You see more white people out there protesting than anybody else.
Well, if government jobs were only for Black people, there wouldn't be government jobs.
That's right.
So I mean, it will hit us harder, but it's going to hit everybody, and we see it.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. J. This has been good. I hope people enjoyed this real talk from you, because I know you know what's going on out there. And I really appreciate you coming on, being our guest today. And we're going to go to our close now. We'll talk back to you next week.
Absolutely. Take care, Lyndia, and thank you.
All right. Dr. J, we're going to close. Life and death is in the power of the tongue, so be careful what you send out. Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So think on these things. We hope that you'll think about what Dr. Julianne Malveaux has said, and that you will look out for your family during these critical times in churches, and everybody else is going to have to step up to the plate. So we are here to encourage each and every one of you. Just stay prayerful and be vigilant. Tune in again next week to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.
Washington and former religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
July 16th through 18th, the nation pays tribute to a new national monument, the Spirit of Freedom. The names of 209,145 black soldiers who served in the American Civil War will be honored. Come out and participate in the kickoff, a tented prayer breakfast with guest speaker Congressman James Clyburn and WJLA TV7's Maureen Bunyan. The banquet will be held at the Washington Convention Center. Hear world-famous Dr. Henry Louis Gates as he tells the story of how comedian Chris Rock learned that his great-great-grandfather's name is on the Wall of Honor. Visit the memorial and museum at Vermont Avenue and U Street, Northwest Washington, D.C.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information. Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Ida B. Wells, born into enslavement, was a journalist and activist. An avid reader, she read through the entire Bible many times. Wells was once asked to leave the ladies' car and sit in the colored train. She refused, and train officials pushed her. Ida B. Wells retaliated, but was pushed off the train at the next stop. A crowd of whites applauded. She vowed to get even. 3 of her close friends were lynched for opening businesses that cut into profits of whites. Everything changed for Wells. She spoke out internationally against lynching of blacks for the rest of her life. Through her efforts, lynching in America nearly disappeared by the time of her death. And NAACP founder, we salute Ida B. Wells for Women's History Month.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.